How's it going tonight, everybody? So I'm going to be having Mary on tonight, and she's shared with us a Sasquatch encounter that she had. It's very brief, and then she also shares with us some really interesting paranormal stuff that gets into all that like Wiccan stuff, and it's really interesting. And I really enjoyed talking to her, so I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Also, just a quick shout out to all the members that we have. I really appreciate you guys signing up for the memberships. We launched it this week, and really thankful for the support. You know, you guys really help keep those neon lights on. And for those that aren't familiar with it, the membership gives you access to episodes 2 weeks before they come out, as well as 30% off the entire shop. So if you want to go check that out, it's only $1 a month over at challengetheunknown.com, and all the information is there for you. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Go ahead, Mary, tell your story. Welcome on. Coming on.
Thank you. Let's see, it was probably about 12 or 13. It was right before we left Illinois the first time. And nothing special. My dog, dumb as a box of rocks, outside barking. We lived right next to a field on the edge of the city limits, so that's nothing new. But go to take the garbage out. You got to go out the back door, around the side of the house, to a dumpster. And the dog is running back and forth, screaming his head off, and he's only running to a certain spot in the fence and running back.
Weird.
Yeah, like when an NPC hits an invisible wall. It was strange. And in the field next to the house, there was a line of pine trees that ran parallel to the road, right across the middle of the field, all the way down. They're about, 15 feet tall, roughly.
Okay.
And I'm nervous because the dog's acting weird, and I'm not the only one outside. Like, I already know this. I can eat that feeling, you know?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
So I'm keeping my eyes on the field, throw everything in the dumpster, jump back behind the fence, and I see a silhouette about 3 trees down. Don't ask me how far exactly that is, but far enough I couldn't see anything clearly. But there was definitely something about 9 to 10 feet, rough, maybe. I was kind of short back then, so everybody was 10 feet.
Right. You judge them by tree size, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was just kind of standing there. I could only see part of the upper silhouette, I guess, like it was leaning around, peeking. And the dog's still going nuts. I run inside, and my dad's super conservative, doesn't really believe in anything that he can't shoot or hasn't shot already.
Fair.
Yep. Live in the sticks. But my mom she was completely the opposite, and she was way out there sometimes. So I'm just like, I'm pretty sure there's something out in the field. The dog's going nuts. Something's between the trees. I can't tell what it is. And of course, my dad's like, well, that's why we have dogs.
There you go.
Well, yeah. Mom gets up and goes outside because she likes drama.
Sounds about right.
Oh, yeah. Man, I gotta quit pacing.
I do that a lot.
Well, I'm pregnant and I pace when I talk on the phone, so it's like even more exhausting.
Oh, there you go. That'll take it out of you for sure.
Well, I follow her back outside, and the dog has moved further down the fence line. So he's in the back half of the yard now and bouncing back and forth between a much smaller space. And Mom's out looking now too, and I'm standing up by the house because turn around, lock the door. It's not my fault she got left behind.
All right, there you go.
And then we hear, it sounded like stomping through the grass, like something was running. And of course, the dog followed it as best he could. There being a fence there, just kind of pointed, still barking. My mother heard it too. When we went back inside, she told my father that there was something out there. But, once again, Dad just went, huh.
Typical how it is. There's either someone who buys it or there are people that just never will unless they see it.
And even then, they're just like, this isn't happening. That's not real.
Confirmation bias the other way around.
Oh, yeah. And then, but I could understand why he wouldn't necessarily be jumpy. Because we had 3/4 of an acre, and then there was right behind our property was another one that was probably an acre wide. And behind that was a creek and some woods. Not very big, but dense enough. And on the other side of that was a trailer park. So, I mean, it wasn't unusual for there to be other people in the woods, but it wasn't a highly populated area. It was kind of off the beaten path a little bit.
Also, who's 10 feet tall?
Yeah, and then we saw 4-wheeler headlights a couple hours later coming from the backfield, which was definitely strange because you cannot get 4-wheelers in through those trees. They're not huge, but they're small and crowded, and that creek is pretty deep in a few places. There was no way.
So there's lights now.
Yeah, that was...
Lights. Interesting. It's always weird whenever there's lights. What do you think it was?
At the time, my first thought was, Sasquatch. But there's no way you can say that without sounding crazy. Even within the community, it just sounds loopy.
Here's a good one for you. So I used to work in wildlife sciences back before I did this. And there's a guy that I used to work with who actually introduced me to the podcast world of this kind of topic. And he told me that he had a couple experiences back when he lived in Washington. He had heard the whoops in the forest and stuff like that. And his father was one of the guys that ran the Forest Service out there in Washington State. And he said his dad was always very critical of him throughout his years, and was like, there's no Sasquatch out here. There, if it was, I'd have seen it because I've been deeper than anybody else,
Yeah.
Sure enough, he said near the end of his career, his dad called him up and was like, hey, I was out in the middle of nowhere in a region where I know for a fact there were no people. And I went through an area, and as I was coming back up, there were fresh, giant human footprints being washed in by the rain. And that'll change it. So it's not so out of this world. There's all kinds of discoveries all the time, especially in a lot of these like regions that are super dense. People find stuff still. And people will always argue with you, there's no way there could be something we don't know about in the U.S. But then I go, man, there's stretches of forest here in the U.S. that are called dead zones, where basically
you're on your own if you go there.
Yeah, no, they won't come to save you because it's too deep. And
in
if
places
you go in
they make movies about.
Exactly, and those are real places. And there's stretches of forest in the U.S. that go straight up to Canada, all the way down into like the mid to like lower U.S. So like there's stretches that go straight up into like all the way straight through, cut through the U.S. And people don't really seem to understand that. So I don't think it's far-fetched at all.
I've been to the West Coast. I spent a year living in Oregon, and we drove everywhere from Coos Bay all the way up to the Washington Peninsula. And that is a whole new kind of darkness at night. Even if it's a full moon out, it's oppressive darkness. So I can only imagine being in the woods at night. That's spooky.
So kind of interesting because we generally don't do Sasquatch stories on here, just because there's already like a really, really popular podcast Sasquatch
Well,
Chronicles that covers it, and the reason that I generally don't cover the Sasquatch stuff is just because I kind of leave that to that territory over there, you know,
it's
and
it's too mainstream and sounds kind of hokey.
right. So, you know, I try to we generally focus on like a lot of the ghost stuff and aliens and UFOs and
I've got plenty of ghost stories.
there you go. But no, I think that's a really interesting account. And what's interesting is a lot of people, you know, talk about Sasquatch just being a primate, but then I hear a lot of stories about like the lights and stuff like you described. I wonder what's going on there with that, why there's always these lights and stuff going on. Are they really just some primate that we haven't or hominid that we missed? Or is there something else going on, you know?
There has to be. I mean, there's what 95% of ocean life that we have yet to discover. So why can there not be things on land that we haven't found yet?
Oh, 100%. There's shoot, I'm trying to remember the name of the animal, but there was this like back in the mid I'm gonna have to look this up now in a minute here, but there was some deep sea like biologist that they put in this little tiny like submersible that was pressurized, and they dropped him down into like super dark places of the ocean that we haven't really been since. And he described everything that he saw down there, and there was stuff that he wrote down in his book that we still haven't found again. So like there was this one 6 foot long bioluminescent fish that he described. I'm gonna have to look it up now because it's gonna bother me, and I know the audience is gonna want to understand what I'm talking about. But go ahead and tell one of your ghost stories.
Okay. Do you remember? Let's see. About 11 years ago, we had a blue moon in the week leading up to Halloween. You remember this?
When was this? What year was this?
It was about 11 years ago. Because I had graduated high school, but I didn't have my son yet, so it had to have been 11 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I know what you're talking about. Long time ago.
Thanks. Gray hair.
11 seems like such a long time ago to me. I don't know why.
The more time passes, the longer it does feel like. But I think that's all perception, you know? We're older. We're on the other side of that, you know, of that line.
Right.
But so the blue moon, Halloween, everybody in the pagan communities getting all excited, of course. I was living with a friend of mine, and he's got gargoyles and wolves all over his house, you know, lots of protective things.
Fun.
Yeah, and I had recently started hanging out with this supposedly very experienced solo practitioner.
Okay.
And it was really weird because she was hitting on me a lot.
That's funny.
Yeah. Uh-oh, my door's open. And she was a strangely assertive person. Like, that's the best way I can describe her.
Interesting character.
Yeah. And I was just sitting in my room, just another day, getting ready for bed. I go to turn the light off, and as soon as I hit the switch, like, the entire pressure in my room changed. And this is absolutely the scariest thing I've ever experienced.
Continue.
And, you know, 19, I'm still scared for unknown reasons.
Yeah.
Jump in bed, pull the blankets up, with my phone in my hand, and I feel like something's moving on the other side of my room. Just, you know,
fantastic.
like when, yeah. And so I start texting this woman because she seemed to know more about things than I did. And I was like, there's something in my room. I need you to like tell me what to do or something. I'm afraid to leave my bed.
Scary stuff.
Definitely. Uh, asking the usual questions, any odors, is anything moving? What else are you feeling? Nauseous, or can you see anything?
Right.
The usual list that you run through when someone's telling you that they're experiencing something. God, this is recorded.
How was that?
And I just tell her, what?
Cameras later.
Oh.
I bet that was picked up on the cameras. That was weird. I'll tell you about it later. I don't know what that was. I bet the camera audio got it. Whatever it was. Continue.
And I just tell her it's like I'm scared, like on the inside, in a sense that I've never been scared before. And it's and this thing, the room wasn't very big, but it was kind of long. But this thing is pacing back and forth, and I can sense what it looks like, which is strange, especially for me. But it was not human, and I started texting. Yeah, I started texting my roommate, and he wasn't answering his phone, of course, even though he was downstairs.
Typical.
So get this. I called his 12-year-old daughter in, and her room was across the hallway, but she was, at the time, one of the most oblivious people I knew. Like a train wreck could have happened right in front of her, and she would have had no idea what was going on.
Sounds like me.
So I was and just like, hey, come turn my light on real quick. And she comes in. She thinks I'm scared over a mouse or something. And as soon as she comes in, I guess her father saw the message I sent, and he comes up to my room, and I bolt out the door. And we're down in the living room, and she's sitting there with us, but somehow still not picking up anything that's going on. And I'm telling him everything that I just witnessed. And the weird part was it was still in my room when I went back up there the next morning to get ready for work.
That's creepy.
Yeah, and the next day it followed me to work.
That's worse.
And it's like having, have you ever had a large bird sit on your shoulder?
Yeah, that's creepy.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a pressure like that. Just that downward pull on your shoulder. And I worked at a radio station at the time. So I was kind of surprised nobody reported anything weird during my sessions. And yeah, the next day it started following me everywhere. And
that's not fun.
Yes, it gets better.
Oh, fantastic. Continue.
Somebody suggested that I put salt around all the doors and windows to prevent it from, coming in and out, keep other things out. The downside was I was at my mother's the first time I did this, and I ended up trapping it in her apartment.
That's freaky. Dude, I always wonder. So before you say that you sound crazy, there's I'm actually doing another interview later today with this girl that I had on. God, it was a long time ago. The show has been on for actually the 1-year anniversary is in like. What day is it? My mouse. There we go. It is in 6 days. It'll be the 1 year of the first episode that ever premiered, and that was with an employee of the Winchester House. But before you start sounding crazy, earlier this year, I did an interview with this one girl who had like some weird mimicry shit going on where this thing would like appear as her, like but without her face, and it was weird. And like her friends had seen it, and it had gotten pretty advanced. And actually, she's coming back on later today to chat with me some more. But when I started talking to her the first time, since then, every time that I speak to her, something starts fucking with the cameras in here. Can't explain it. Shuts down cameras, stops recording cycles, shuts everything down. I've had the cameras start yelling at me that the internal memory is full, and they're not full whatsoever. So I've had a lot of weird shit happen around here. So don't start thinking you're crazy. There's a lot of weird shit out there that we don't really understand. And one of the things that I always try and, I guess, reference when people say it's all hocus pocus, and it's all this new age trending shit. And I'm like, no, I really don't think it is. I want people to imagine, like, I think people forget to realize, yes, our culture has become very advanced in the last like century or two, but we're still like super new to the playing field here. So imagine you took a bunch of scientists from the Victorian era and you took them to see the aurora, right? Like the northern lights up in the sky.
Right.
They could see it, whenever it would happen. They could observe it, but we wouldn't have the technology to actually understand it or measure it until I think it was like 150 years later. We just didn't have the instruments yet. We had to create special instruments to actually understand what was going on and what was causing it. So whenever we hear about like this paranormal stuff, I'm like, what if we just don't have the tech yet? What if this is some interdimensional stuff, or maybe some different light spectrum stuff that we just really don't understand yet, and we just don't have the tech to measure it yet? So people are seeing what they're saying they're seeing, and modern scholars are just like, meh, we're already so advanced. If there's anything there, we'd be able to understand it. But I'm like, man, we're discovering new shit all the time, man. We've got new elements that we're playing with. We have elements that we still don't have that are stable. We don't really understand. Like a lot of these parallel universe theories are very possibly true. So I really don't think we know what we're dealing with yet. So before you say that you sound crazy or get uncomfortable talking about it, like I think there's really something to it. I just don't think that we have the technology to fully understand what's going on yet.
Well, of the stories that I have, this is actually the only one I'm not uncomfortable talking about.
There you go. There's a lot of weird stuff, man. We generally don't talk about like demonic stuff on here just because like that whole section really freaks me out. And
understandably.
Yeah, Katie, who's going to be on later today, or Kate's going to be on later today. She hers was pretty on the edge there of like, man, you're really dealing with something that's really dark. And then all the camera stuff started happening here, and like the weird noises and the tapping on the windows in the middle of the night here and stuff like that was already pushing it for me. But continue with your story. Like there's some weird stuff out there, man. There's some weird stuff out there.
Let's see. I had just trapped it in my mom's apartment, right? And I could tell that I had trapped it there because I had left and then come back, and it was like walking into a wall. Like, have you ever walked through a waterfall of some kind?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's what it felt like, only unpleasant, if that makes any sense.
Sounds about right.
And it's, like it was just sitting there waiting for me. Like, how dare you leave me here? I called a gentleman I was dating at the time because him and his friend were really big into the pagan scene also,
right.
specifically Wicca.
Mm-hmm.
And I called them, asked them a little bit more about this, and just batting around theories. One of them suggested it might be some kind of familiar that was a good thing. Other than that, nobody was really sure why it was there or what I had done. And for some reason, I couldn't figure out why, but I had just started drawing pentacles all over the place. The upright star within the circle.
Yeah.
Well, it suggested that I was subconsciously doing this as a protection thing. The theories were everywhere.
Yeah. Like I
And they
said,
just,
man, we don't understand this stuff fully. We only have theories.
yeah, and the more we talked about the theories, the more they declined in sanity.
Down the rabbit hole. That's what I say.
Oh yeah.
That's a wild story. I love
And
how. Go ahead.
this was just all of that week leading up to Halloween of the blue moon. I mean, it was. I guess that had some kind of effect on it.
Possibly. Who knows? Some type of astronomical event. Who knows? It's all weird stuff that I have no idea how it works. I'd love to figure out how it works, but I just don't think we have the tech yet.
I think that's one thing where we'll never have the tech for it. We'll just have more theories.
Theories. Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's
Oh no,
the stepping stone to discovery.
Keeps it open, and because with theories, the possibility of the results are limitless.
They are. Before anybody corrects me, hypotheses, whatever. There's this one guy I used to work to. He's one of my biggest skeptics ever. Yeah, So him and I have this whole thing. We back when I started the podcast and ended up leaving, wildlife sciences. I actually got laid off, and he always was my biggest critic, and he would make fun of me. He's like, "You believe in Sasquatch? Come on," and I'm like, "Hey man, like." We find shit all the time that we thought was either dead or that we didn't know existed, and we were outside a lot, and whenever we would come across desert cottontails, the little rabbits, I'd point at it and yell, "Look, Steven, it's a jackalope. It's a jackalope, Steven. Did you see it?" All quick as it runs through the middle of the desert, and he goes. He's like, "Come on, man." And the thing is about the jackalopes that a lot of people don't know is they think they're just an old American folklore, but the reality is the jackalopes are a real thing. Biologically, they're a real thing. So basically, what accounts for the jackalope sightings over the years was there's this virus that rabbits can get that causes them to grow cancerous growths out of their head and face. And sometimes they just grow straight out of the top of their heads and turn into basically horns. And there's actually scientific documentation of this going back like 300 years. And a lot of people are like, it's just American folklore. And I'm like, no, it's a real thing. People really saw horned rabbits for a long time. They might not be their own species, but there are horned rabbits that have existed and will pop up periodically throughout these regions.
Huh.
So people want to discount it. I'm like, look, no, it's a real thing. You can't always discount anecdote. You can't discount people's sightings all the time. Sometimes people will misidentify things because perception is unreliable, and I will admit that. But when you have thousands of people saying that they're seeing this thing, they can't all be misidentifications. They can't all be, it's a false memory. I just remembered it differently than it happened. It can't all be that, Yeah,
it's astronomically unlikely that it would be a mass hallucination,
Right. And I mean, even with like the mass hallucination stuff, like there's something about like the ancient alien theory where all these people were seeing this like one particular event that went down. I can't remember if it was a craft or something, and modern historians have written it off as, it was a mass hallucination. I'm like, why did, like 1,000 people mass hallucinate the same thing? That didn't happen. So, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Who knows what it is? That's freaky, man. All this stuff is freaky, and I love it.
Oh, I know. It's great. It opens up a whole other realm of uncertainty. Like we don't know, and that's why there's no hard evidence, and we can only have theories. And we see what we see, and some people accept what they see, and other people don't.
So here's kind of my shining example of all this. So back when I worked in wildlife sciences, my specialty was ectotherms, so anything that didn't produce its own body heat. And you know, a lot of the things that fuel the cryptozoology subculture is whenever we discover new things or something that people used to think was extinct. There's kind of something romantic about that. Discovering a species that everyone thought was gone. And while I worked in this field, I actually stumbled across a toad. Right. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
toad had some type of genetic anomaly that turned its skin the color of gold. So I photographed it, and I actually ended up getting a paper published on it back. I wrote it when I was 22, and actually I think it got published earlier this year. But it actually went through peer review and got published. So if you go out there and be like, yeah, if you go out in Arizona, there's genetic anomalies that cause toads to have the color of yellow and gold skin only. People would think you're fucking high, And now it's in scientific literature that this is a real thing that happens. What I theorized in my paper, what I thought it was, that it was a type of leucistic thing. So there's albinism, and then there's leucism, which is albinism is you're missing every pigmentation. And then leucism is you're missing every pigmentation except for white. And this animal had like yellow eyes and yellow skin, and it was crazy. So before you let people discount you on that something just can't exist because there's no hard proof of it, doesn't mean that it's not out there. And I think that if a golden toad could exist, what else exists out there?
Yeah.
Going off. Good.
But I'm sorry, and I apologize. I should have warned you that this is kind of a long story.
That's fine by me. I'm just chilling. I've got my morning coffee, and we're 35 minutes, and that's not bad at all. Longest episode I've ever had was over an hour. You got time.
Okay. I feel like I've been challenged.
There you go.
So series. And strangely enough, like I said, this was the whole week leading up to Halloween, the blue moon, and we're at about halfway through the week at this point, Wednesday, Thursday. And I'm explaining all of this to my mother because, like I said, she's really into it and she likes the drama.
100%.
She likes to see people tripping over themselves. Her flavor of the week just happened to be a gentleman who was also interested in paganism and very heavily into Wicca, specifically the Church of Odin. And he happened to be friends with the gentleman who started the Church of Odin in Omaha.
There you go.
So the weirdness of all of this just happening to be at the same time was strange.
Strange.
Yeah, I'm pretty fond of that word. It seems to fit in many scenarios. So she put in an email to this guy asking him to come help us. They showed up the day before Halloween.
Yeah.
And they talked to me, and they told me it was nowhere near as potent as I was feeling it was.
Mm-hmm.
And just that them being there, it was trying to hide itself, is how they explained it to me. So they did a, lack of a better word, an exorcism of sorts.
Okay.
Not as dramatic as, all the movies with the priest and the spraying holy water and things flying, nothing like that. But he had some herbs and some gems, a few stones, and he was doing a ceremony in my mother's apartment because that's where we trapped it. because I was a moron and didn't do enough research.
Do what you can with what you got.
And yeah, they severed its tie to me, and I explained to them that we needed to go to where I lived because that was where it started. And so I called my roommate, told him we were coming. They blessed his house too, did a very similar ritual. They gave me a piece of jet to carry in my pocket for the next week. And they suggested that this new woman I had started hanging out with had set this on me.
Whoa.
Because she wasn't part of a covenant. She was a solo practitioner. She was actively against covenants. And like I said, she was strangely assertive, bordering on aggressive, but it was low key, you know?
Dude.
Just that weird kind of strangeness to her. So that was their suggestion, was she had set it on me because I wasn't listening to her instructions to the letter.
That's weird.
Yeah. And I was like, this is a little over the top for punishment, if you ask me, but okay.
Dude, that is wild.
But as soon as they completed the ceremony, I felt different. And they even said that they noticed differences immediately in my posture, my facial expressions, just everything about me had changed right there in that moment. I didn't have that, that feeling on my shoulder anymore.
So wild how that kind of stuff happens, dude. There's some weird stuff, man. Like a lot of these, like this witchcraft shit. I've had a lot of people on the show at this point, and like there was one girl that stumbled upon some weird witchcraft shit going on in the forest when she was a teenager, and like she stumbled upon a camp or some shit. I think that one was Pennsylvania Witchcraft. That was a good episode for anybody that new to the show and wants to go back and watch that one. That one's a really good one. And I remember I had this person never came on, but I talked to him off the air, and he was telling me about how this lady that his father was seeing when he was like 16 was into like all this weird witch shit, and basically his father's entire demeanor changed, and basically their family fell apart. And as things started to fall apart, he figured out, like, he found that this woman, like, he found a bunch of witchcraft shit that she was hiding in the house. And I was like, what the fuck, dude? And he said that he, like, went in, and I found all this crazy shit, like voodoo dolls and that kind of stuff, like, where they're made out of, like, the stuffing and all kinds of shit. Like, it was wild of a story, and I'm kind of bummed he never came on, but I don't know, man. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with this stuff.
And it gets even better. I know I keep saying that. But given that they'd severed this thing, and I did what they told me, and I carried the jet, and I did certain meditations throughout the next week, and everything was fine.
There you
go. Let's see. The following summer, I got pregnant. I had my son the March after that. And I was, I'm 20. I've got a baby. I'm still living at my mom's, or moved back into my mom's at a different house.
Right.
And I'm sleeping in bed. Baby's asleep. Everything's fine. The usual stressed out new mother. And all of a sudden, I'm not alone in my room.
It's bad.
And I look at the foot of my bed, and that thing is standing there.
Oh, that's creepy.
And it came back. But it was just standing there staring at me while I'm trying to sleep. And I'm just like, I don't have time for this. I need to sleep. Go away. And I went back to sleep. And yeah, because I didn't see it again until 2.5 years later in Oregon. I was living in Iowa when everything else happened. This time I was in Oregon. I've got 2 children now, both under the age of 3. I'm living in an RV out, like I said, amongst the advanced darkness.
Creepy.
And once again, I walked into the bedroom, and it was standing there, once again, at the foot of the bed, in this tiny little room.
Creepy.
Yeah. And I'm obviously tired of all the crap, and I'm just like, I really don't want to deal with this right now. I walked back out of the room, and I haven't seen it since.
Interesting. There you go. Guess it's gone.
And I've never been able to track down any kind of demonologist or anyone with advanced knowledge of this that could tell me why it came back.
I don't know, man. I wish we had the answers. I really do. And what's really fucking weird is one of my cameras just battery just dropped.
It
was about 3/4 of the way full, and it just dropped to flashing suddenly. So we've got probably about 6 minutes left before that thing dies on us. So continue with your story, but we'll try and kind of wrap it up here.
Oh yeah, I mean that is pretty much the end of the story. I mean, aside from that, it's, you know, I'm still looking for a demonologist, you know, someone with advanced knowledge that I do not have and cannot access reliably.
Right.
Because you can look up the same demon and pull up 50 different results, and each one will give you a completely different story.
Right. You know, probably not the best place of information for this kind of stuff is, you know, the demon forums. So, man, that's creepy.
Yeah, well, I hadn't actually discovered Reddit until just last fall. So
there you go.
But I'm still trying to figure out how to search certain feeds on there.
Yeah, just wait till you get, you know, Reddit's pretty good. You know, you get a lot of people, like, it's pretty healthy communities, you know. There's always the toxic few in the groups, but in general, like, a lot of the Reddit communities and the paranormal stuff are pretty well accepting. And there's a lot of people in there that really know their stuff. You know, just...
Well, if you happen to come across any of these people, feel free to send them my way.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I'll send them your way. It's, but yeah, I mean, you should put up a post. I don't think that there's any harm in that, you know. There's a lot of people that put up, like, on the Truth Is Here subreddit, if you put up like a help post, people will respond to you, and you'll get some good information if you're looking for it. So,
well, the good news is, I mean, I have never posted this story online anywhere, so this is your exclusive.
Oh yes, I love my exclusives.
All right. Well, if you feel like you want me to contribute some other time, my
100%.
Stories are a lot shorter than this.
That's fine. We can do we can do a bunch of small stories in another episode later down the line if you'd like to come back on, because I really enjoyed talking to you this time around. That was a good one. I think the stories were good, and I think that there's probably gonna be some viewers that come forward like they always do and say, hey, you know, I saw the same thing, or I've experienced the same thing. So I think it'll really help out.
Yeah, I'm pretty big in dream psychology too, so I have plenty of theories on that also.
Fantastic. Thank you for coming on, Mary. It was great, and I'll catch you next time.